So PS6, the question is that I keep hearing almost every day, why, right? What is going to warrant this new generation machine in this day and age in 2026 with everything going on, of course, pricing and all of that stuff too. But even outside of that, like what features could possibly warrant a PS6? Why even bother, right? People keep saying like, we've barely seen what this generation can do. And, you know, we haven't exhausted this generation. We haven't taxed the PS5 and Xbox Series. We don't need next generation. Well, we never really need next generation, right? But there are reasons, there are advances to be had, right? So on this video, I'm gonna break it down for you guys, right? I'm not gonna go into a deep spec dive. I actually already did that based on the leaks, the rumored specs, which again are not official and clearly are subject to change, but I already did that. I'll put a card up here for you guys, but I'm gonna high level kind of, you know, educated guesses and best, good solid bets, okay, is what I wanna focus on. What the specs are, and most importantly, what the target is. We'll talk about that. Number two, what are some of the advances in display technology that's meaningful here? And then number three, what are the actual differentiators that could be coming to next gen to make the game experience unique on these next generation consoles? That's what we're going to talk about here. Let's get into it. So once again, of course, before I really get into it, please, you know the drill, like and subscribe to the channel, to this video. Send me the like, send me some comments. You know I respond. Appreciate the love so far. Let's keep it going. Let's keep the channel growing, okay? Appreciate y'all. So part one, the specs. Again, I've broken down the detailed spec based on Moore's Law is dead, initial leak, and you know, we kind of got a general idea, but at a high level, again, we don't know details, we don't know numbers, we don't know actual clock speeds and, you know, core counts. We're not going to get into all of that here. Safe bet, what we know, the CPU and GPU are both going to be developed and designed, of course, by AMD using their new generation, next generation architecture. CPU Zen 6, we know that. It's going to be, for PS6 especially, Sony's going to focus on efficiency. So it's going to be, you know, relatively low powered, but, you know, still at least 8 cores, obviously, if not more, is what the rumors are saying. But Zen 6 architecture, that's going to be quite a big leap from the current Zen 2 architecture. And we already kind of know a little bit about Zen 6. AMD has already talked about it publicly. So basically, that Zen 6 is already a pretty big jump from Zen 5. And, you know, it's going to be a really big jump from Zen 2 of the current PS5. So CPU is going to advance quite a bit. I would expect at least on the order of 2 to 3x the CPU performance based on what we know of Zen 6. GPU, RDNA 5, right? Current PS5, just to recap, it's RDNA 2. RDNA 5 is going to be a significant overhaul of the RDNA architecture, and they're going to be leaning in on newer rendering and ray tracing / path tracing. We know that as well. Expect to see a lot of advances from AMD in terms of really pushing ray tracing and path tracing performance, and the ability to have newer rendering technologies. Various types of newer rendering technologies will be coming to bat. You can expect that we're going to see, in Sony's case, PSSR, or whatever they call it, advance and have additional features that we are used to seeing on the PC side. We already have PSSR now, which is basically super resolution. That's SR. We're going to see some version of frame gen. We're going to see some version of ray reconstruction, right? Expect those staples, which can be meaningful in the console space, of course, right? So GPU is going to be definitely advanced. The leak said only about 3 times the performance in raster. That's to be expected. I've talked about this already, but rasterization is not where growth is going to be any longer because Moore's Law is dead. We've talked about that. But ray tracing and AI processing, huge jumps. We're going to see a lot of that. So that's what we generally know. Here is the TLDR, guys. The performance targets for next gen, for PS6 and for the whatever Xbox does. I can tell you this. The performance target is broadly this: 4K 60 with path tracing enabled, okay? And I'll say heavy ray tracing. 4K 60 with heavy ray tracing and path tracing, 4K 120 with raster and light ray tracing, I'll call it, right? That is the target. 4K 60 with path tracing, 4K 120, raster, light ray tracing. What does that mean? Or how is that, beyond? Well, that's roughly, path tracing again it's going to be quite more advanced. But in general, that 2 to 3 times raster performance lines up pretty well with that, right? 2 to 3 times over the base PS5, by the way, right? And that's probably on the order of 1.5 to 2 times the PS5 Pro, right? And that makes sense. Today there's a lot of games on PS5 Pro already that run at 4K 60 with ray tracing. And by the way, when I say 4K, no, it doesn't necessarily mean native. It doesn't have to be native. I don't even want to hear about that discussion. We've been over this. At this point, these AI solutions, DLSS 4 and 4.5, FSR 4.1, and PSSR, we already know. These things do an amazing job and often look better than native resolution. So we don't need it, we don't care. As long as it looks good, as long as the resulting image looks good. And it likely will with PSSR 3 or whatever Sony calls it, right? But clearly it's going to advance. PSSR 2 already today looks really, really good. In general, though, I have on good authority that 4K 120 native was actually the target. I would expect, though, that a lot of AAA games are probably still going to need at least super resolution, SR to really hit it and lock it in. But it's not a stretch to think that even natively, a lot of games can probably do that. When, again, we have games today on PS5 Pro that are doing 4K 60, right? Especially with the help of PSSR, right? So not a stretch, right? And that's the broad target. So when you think about just general graphics, and path trace games is going to be a much, much more common next gen. I can tell you that. And of course, right now, they only can, work with what they have, what they know, right? So they're looking at current existing games when they talk about that target. No, that doesn't mean that Naughty Dog's 2030 game, whatever that is, will run at 4K 60 with path tracing. We don't know what that is. That game doesn't even exist. It hasn't been created yet. But Sony and Microsoft can look at current games like Cyberpunk path trace, Alan Wake 2 path trace, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle path trace, Resident Evil Requiem path trace, 007 First Light, which is coming soon on PC, path trace. They can look at these games today, and that's what they're working to test and optimize, to say that you're going to see ports of all of those games, all of the path trace games today. There are several dozen of them now, just about, and they're going to be running at 4K 60, right, on these next-gen consoles. Maybe the Helix, which supposedly is a little bit more powerful, might be able to run at 4K 144, and the PS6 is running at 4K 120, right? That's what that power difference may look like, but irrespective, 4K 120 is the target, okay? So, broadly speaking, that's where we're at spec-wise. SSD, of course, going to be standard. Obviously, there'll be a bump up in memory, probably on the order of maybe 2x or something like that, 30 to 40 gigs. Okay, but remember that when they actually do unveil this stuff. Now, part number 2. Here's another reason why. This is not a reason why we need next gen, of course, but this is something that next gen can offer beyond what we currently have. Currently, these consoles are limited to 4K 120 by the HDMI chipset and HDMI standard that they use. They are using HDMI 2.1. And 2.1 and the chipset they use and how much bandwidth they configure, they're actually a little bit different between the PS5 and Xbox Series, but in general, that's the cap. So that's why you can't see anything targeting anything higher on these consoles. You see TVs that are pushing 4K 165, right? That if you plug in a PC or whatever, they can do that. But in general, we're limited by the HDMI 2.1 standard. For next generation, HDMI standard is getting a bump. and we're going to see HDMI 2.2. In fact, we're going to see HDMI 2.2 devices really start coming to market probably next year. We'll see a lot of that at CES 2027, okay? TVs are going to start, processors and AV receivers are going to start, that kind of thing. Okay, so what does that mean for gaming? Well, that means that that cap is now gone. HDMI 2.2 essentially doubles the bandwidth. It goes from 48 gigabytes per second to 96, right? And with that extra bandwidth, we go from a cap of 4K 120 to now being able to do technically 4K 480 hertz or 480 frames per second in terms of just the capability. I do expect that we're going to start seeing a lot of TVs market and have the capability to do 4K 240, which kind of puts it more in line with what we see on like the PC side, right? So next generation consoles, 4K 240 and everything in between, 4K 144, 165, 180, whatever, right? Like, and then 240. I think that is really going to be a thing, right? We're going to start seeing these consoles be one of the few devices that can really push, anything, because Blu-ray and, any other set-top box is probably not really going to be pushing that, right? So that's meaningful, right? If you care about frames, you can, consoles are going to get a lot closer to PC in that regard. No, new AAA games are probably not going to be pushing more than 120 for sure, if not even more than 60. But again, these boxes are going to be playing old PS4 games, old PS5 games, old Xbox One games, and old Xbox Series games. Many of those games on these new, powerful platforms are going to be able to definitely push well beyond 120. Again, we have a number, not an insignificant number of games today that target 120 and run somewhere between 60 and 120, okay, on base PS5 as well as the Pro. So again, not a stretch that those games are going to get a big boost and run at 2 or even 3 times faster on these new boxes. So the third piece of this is, what is the differentiator? What is the experience about? And how can it be different? And this is where it gets interesting. Of course, Sony or Microsoft hasn't announced anything official, so I don't know, and I'm not sitting here to leak and drop NDAs or anything like that. But it is an interesting thought exercise, guys, okay? Now, let's go back. Let me just set the stage here and give you guys some context, because this is, to me, where the heart of the console is. We know about PCs. Historically, we knew about arcades. Consoles was an opportunity for a company to make a dedicated machine and design it from the ground up to make it into the ultimate gaming machine for whatever, attributes and features they value, that company values, Sega, Nintendo, Intellivision, right, whoever, right? So there's always opportunities. Now, historically, let's go back. To me, the console differentiators were the following. The first was in the technology itself. They usually use very different esoteric type of hardware design, CPUs and, whatever, ways to generate graphics and sound and whatever. Stuff that you wouldn't find anywhere else. You wouldn't find it in arcades. You wouldn't find it on a PC at the time. And that'll just allow, some innovative out-of-the-box thinking for game devs to try to take advantage of those machines and try to take advantage of that power, okay? Obviously, we saw that kind of accumulate up to the PS3, but historically, every machine, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and N64, Sega Dreamcast, and Saturn, these were all very, very different architectures. So that was one of the answers to why. And the esoteric, different, unique hardware architectures allowed for unique game experiences that could only be developed and played on those boxes. So hence the other Y console, exclusive games, right? In the beginning, it was a lot of arcade ports, but by the time we get to like the 16-bit era, there was a lot more exclusive games. You can only play Mario and Donkey Kong and Star Fox and Mario Kart, right, and stuff like that on your Super Nintendo or Nintendo thing. You can only play Sonic, Vector Man, and all of this, the Sega arcade games in your home. You can only do that on a Sega Genesis at the time, right? And, when we think about game, you guys know, you think about game, you think about your history with gaming and your childhood memories. It's you in the home on a console. It was usually playing games that were very, very specific to that box, right? You remember N64 because you remember playing GoldenEye and Mario 64, right? And Ocarina of Time, stuff like that, right? That's why you remember that. You remember, the Super Nintendo from playing Super Mario World and playing the Final Fantasy series and Star Emblem and all of these, JRPGs that were, renowned there, that wasn't on Genesis, right? And wasn't on PC and stuff like that, right? That's what you remember, right? So the exclusive games, of course, was the magic of consoles, right? Not to say that technically speaking, it couldn't be done on a PC even back in the day, but the business and the positioning was these games on these boxes, games designed to take advantage of what that technology can do. And that really accumulated, I would say, in the PS3 generation, PS2 generation as well, to some extent. Motion Engine, right? Sony's a motion engine. And we saw games like Final Fantasy X and Gran Turismo 3 and 4 and Jak and Daxter, God of War, right? I mean, that were things that were built and designed for that hardware, right? Now, the problem is pretty much all of those console value adds and justifications have gone away. As we sit here in this generation with the PS5 and Xbox Series, the unique hardware is gone, right? This hardware is now basically just AMD PC components, right? Not very unique there. Okay, the novelty factor is somewhat gone. I would say that the novelty factor for consoles for a while was also, again, the whole living room aspect and being able to play that. Local multiplayer is all but dead. No games anymore using local multiplayer because everything is online now. You guys remember getting, playing in your living room, getting your buddies and getting your family to play Rockstar, to play Guitar Hero, to play the Wii when that was a thing. I mean, the reason why those things got so big was because it had a social element that you couldn't find anywhere else. You couldn't do that on a PC. No one's huddling around a desktop PC and trying to hook up various accessories, and you're not doing that, right? So again, sitting there at the Mario Kart parties, and then Wii took off with Wii Fit, Wii Sports. Everyone was doing that, and you had to do it on a console box designed for the living room to really experience that. That was the novelty. We lost that, right? So there was no more novelty of, these unique boxes for gaming that the family can huddle around and do something together. They killed that, right? And finally, exclusive games. This generation, everybody went kind of crazy. Sony and Microsoft. Microsoft is putting every game on the previous generation in the beginning. Everything is cross-gen. Everything is on PC. They literally cannibalized Xbox Series from both sides. Day one. Both sides of it. If you care about the utmost in quality and graphics and fidelity, well, just get it on your PC, which can go above and beyond the Xbox Series. If it's too expensive for you to invest in an Xbox Series for $500 back then and now higher, well, just go and get an Xbox One, or just continue to play your Xbox One. You don't have any reason to get that new box, right? Sony's putting everything on PC, so there's Sony PS5 sold really well, but there's definitely a good segment of the audience that are PC gamers, that are enthusiasts, that historically would have bought a PS3, 4, or whatever to play God of War, to play Gran Turismo, to play The Last of Us and Uncharted, stuff like that. They put all those games on PC this generation, right? So, and I know that. I know for a fact many people there were PC gamers I'll just wait. I'll wait a year. I'll wait 2 years. I'm not, they don't want to get a console, but they did before just to play those games. They didn't have to do that anymore, right? So both companies went kind of crazy and flipped everything upside down, and we lost that, right? So what is the differentiator factor, right? I would say that we really started beyond just exclusive games and beyond just, unique hardware. We really started seeing that there is a such thing as a game experience, a user experience with that box that really, to me, started with the Xbox 360, okay? Because before the Xbox 360, your experience of using your console and using your game, there was no interaction other than putting in your cartridge and putting in the disc and just playing the game, just getting into the game. There wasn't any identity or sense of using the system for a Sega Genesis or a Super Nintendo, right? It didn't do anything else, right? Yeah, some of the later machines started at least having a CD-ROM. You can play a CD in there or something like that. But generally speaking, it still wasn't much of an experience. That box was to put in your media and play the game. But the 360 changed that. It added an experience around the game that was a selling point, was a unique experience, a unique way to enjoy the same game. So when I talk about differentiators, I'm saying if you have the same game, again, we lost a lot of exclusives. So a lot of third parties are making games on PC, Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, whatever. So why pick one of those platforms to play that same game? That's what I mean by differentiator, right? So if you don't have the exclusive games, you have the same game, but you can still have an exclusive experience with that same game. And that really didn't exist much. Like I said before, the difference between Super Nintendo and Genesis and PlayStation and N64 was always in that technical, unique hardware, right? It was CD versus cartridge. It was how many, bits you had on the, and how much color you can display, right, on the Super Nintendo versus the Genesis or something like that. It was always technical, more in the hardware, because there was no software experience around it. But 360, like I said, changed that, because now you're like, wow, even without putting in a piece of media, even without putting in a game, you're like, I can just go on the system. I want to talk to my friends. I can do that. I want to go and buy something off a digital store. I don't even need to go physical store. I can do that. I want to create and customize my digital avatar, my representation of myself in this universe. I can do that. I want to, try to get a higher achievement score. I can do that, right? So there was so many things. And of course, it could play media, could play movies, could play music and all that kind of stuff. But there was so much around it where people said, I want to play Call of Duty on Xbox. Why? Because it's technically superior? Maybe not, especially compared to PC. But it's a unique experience because Xbox Live is that stuff. And all of my friends are already on there. And I'm already invested and I want to get, improve my achievement score, right? That matters. If I get on something else, my achievement score doesn't move. I want to play it on that box so I can do that. And I just love hanging out and playing socially with my friends that I can talk to with no matter what game I'm playing, even and when I'm playing a game, they're playing something else. We can still have that community. We can still have that communication. That was unique. PlayStation 3 clearly didn't do that at the time. They didn't meet that challenge until later with PS4. And then PS4 adds a share button that makes sharing and streaming that much easier and accessible. And we started seeing that increase. But what was the differentiators in this generation for PS5 in particular? Well, I would submit that Xbox Series didn't really have any differentiators. They literally had the same controller, the same UI, right, from the Xbox One, from the previous generation, right? So from an experience standpoint, except for the quick resume thing or the quick switching thing, that was it, right? That was it. At least Sony tried. They knew that they wasn't going to differentiate themselves on hardware. So whenever you hear about PS5, little trailers for here's what the PS5 version is and interviews, developer interviews, what do they always say? Repeat the same 3 pillars. These are the PS5 differentiators. Of course, it starts with the DualSense. And unlike a lot of previous, even the DualShock 4 on the PS4 was barely used. The features were barely used. And we've seen a lot of stuff in the past, iToy and Move and whatever, that were barely used. But the DualSense is widely adopted. Almost every developer takes some time to put some effort into taking advantage of those features, particularly the haptic feedback and the adaptive triggers, right? Most every game uses it to some degree, right? To some degree. They have exclusive haptics that don't exist anywhere else, right? Or they have, kind of features with the adaptive triggers, right? They may not use the touchpad and the motion control and the RGB light. I mean, that controller has everything, microphone and speaker, whatever. They might not use all of that stuff, but they at least use the haptics and the adaptive triggers, which is awesome. I mean, that adoption rate is got to be like at least over 80%. I mean, every game that I play, and I have a lot of games, has it. So that's awesome. That's the key differentiator. You can play Call of Duty and Battlefield 6 other places. That's a great example. I have Battlefield 6 on my PC. But there is something about the way it feels with that controller that adds to the experience. It does. The feeling, when you feel everything, you can feel your steps, you feel the weight of the gun when you're shooting. I mean, you don't get that anywhere else. You don't. Now, of course, you can nowadays hook up your DualSense to your PC and kind of replicate that, but that's still hit or miss, and it doesn't work on every game. It needs to be wired in, I believe, or whatever, right? So, but the core experience is PS5 exclusive. So there's that. There's the sound with the Tempest audio engine. You always hear that. When they see that trailer, they talk about 3D audio with Tempest. Well, I know what you guys are thinking. 3D audio, surround sound isn't new. We've had that. Xbox can do that. Whatever. Well, here's the thing. Nobody else has a end-to-end 3D audio pipeline from the content creation by the developer in the studio through actually getting it in processing on the hardware to distributing out. No one else has that, which is why nearly, as far as I can know, nearly every PS5 game uses Tempest audio, meaning that it has some processing for 3D sound. Every game, okay? And the cool thing about it is the compatibility factor. That's the unique thing that Xbox doesn't have. Sure, Xbox can do Dolby Atmos, and it can process that, but very few games do it because it doesn't have the end-to-end pipeline. Right, and to distribute it, you need like a Dolby license, and you need obviously a Dolby setup or Dolby headphones specific hardware. No, you don't with PS5. Tempest works on everything. You're getting Tempest audio output from PS5 that you will hear with your standard TV, no matter how old your TV is, your sound bar, any set of headphones. You don't need specific headphones. Any set of headphones, all the way up to like a full-on Dolby Atmos home theater, like I have, right? You get it, right? So that's the proposition there, that you're always getting that sound, and it's authored specifically with Tempest. That's a slightly different flavor of 3D sound, right? So that's the second thing. And the third thing, of course, is the SSD. In the beginning of the generation, that was a difference. It was faster than Xbox, and it was a new thing in general to have an SSD on console. So that was the other thing. So Sony tried, but yes, I get it, guys. You can make an argument that even the sum of those three things aren't like as transformative, of course, as it was when back in the day when you saw the PlayStation and saw Warhawk or Battle Arena Toshinden for the first time and just saw 3D polygons on your screen. Of course not, right? Or you saw Mario 64 and 64 compared to Super Mario World. It was like, whoa, of course, right? But those are still things to say, play on PlayStation, right? Now, for next gen looking forward, what is that going to be? Path tracing and stuff isn't going to be it because most people don't care about path tracing. Most people don't know about path tracing, especially at the masses level for the console target audience, right? And it's not really new because PC gamers have been playing with ray tracing and path tracing for years now, right? So that's not really compelling. Now, I don't know what the answer is here, and I'm not dropping any exclusive information here, but I will say that this, to me, is really the most interesting part of what next gen can be. And I can say that both Sony and Microsoft obviously have been thinking about this beyond the specs. What is it going to be about these boxes? This is the only real element to me that still has some mystery that keeps the excitement there. What are they going to bring that will make playing games on an Xbox Helix or on a PlayStation 6 different? It's going to be the same games. We need to, right? Devs need to put their games on everything as much as possible. But why would it be different there? In 2027, 2028, where is the real differentiator coming from for gaming? It's coming from AI. It's coming from AI. Now, when I say that, I'm not talking about like AI slop and just AI content in the games. I'm talking about actually integrating AI within the system level, so that how you interface with the system is through AI. This isn't really like that far out there, right? Because we do that now all the time. Now, if you have got a car in the last couple of years, The car probably has Chat GPT built in, and you can interface with your car, with natural language and say basically anything, and it will give you information. You can use it to control features on the car, right, et cetera, et cetera. We obviously are doing that now with our devices. Apple has Apple Intelligence. Android, Google has Google Gemini, right? We still got Amazon Alexa there, right? I mean, this is a thing. And, we know how powerful AI is today, and it's constantly evolving. And by the time these machines come out in 2027 or 2028, it's going to be that much better, that much more responsive, that much faster, that much more capable. So just imagine what that could look like, right? A world where your main interaction with the system is with like an AI agent, PlayStation AI, right? Or something like that. Now, this is interesting because Microsoft was clearly going this way too, but as we know, the new CEO, Sasha, went back on it and said she was going to remove Copilot, which is Microsoft's AI agent, right? And take it out of the next Xbox. That's an interesting decision because this probably is going to be a pretty unique proposition for the next generation, the next 5 to 10 years of gaming. Sony was definitely looking into this. I don't know if they're still going to ship it or not. But this was something that clearly devs and these platform developers were looking into. But what could that look like? I mean, at the bare minimum, right? You could imagine having like a PlayStation agent. Remember, the DualSense has a microphone built right into it. You don't need to ship a Connect camera with a microphone. You don't need to even ship an extra set of headphones or some kind of mic, right? It's already there. It has a speaker, has a microphone built in. So the core experience is you sit down, you got your controller in your hand, and you can just say whatever. You can say PlayStation or whatever, but talk in natural language. You can do everything, right? Hey, optimize, the video and audio for my TV or for my setup. The same things that you today have to go and navigate through a bunch of menus and scrolling and try to, read all of this stuff. It already knows. It knows from the HDMI connection what kind of TV you have, what the capabilities are. Can it do 120 hertz? Is it 4K? Blah blah blah. It already knows that. You just tell it, go optimize it. Bam, right? 1440p check, 4K check, and do all of that stuff that you see in that audio video menu, for example, right? You can do all that stuff. Go to start a party chat with my buddy, blah blah blah, or my buddies, blah blah blah. Bam, start a party chat. Start a share play session, right, with so-and-so, right, or whoever you want, right? Hey, ask them. You don't have to go to the menu. Hey, is so-and-so online now? What are they playing? Can I join? Can I get a share, start a share play with them? And they'll get a prompt that says, hey, so-and-so wants to share play with you, right? And they got to accept it. But you can do all of that. Hey, is there a demo available for the new Onimusha game? Yes, download that for me. Do that. You don't have to go and navigate to the store and wait for it to load and navigate through to find which is, you guys know how annoying and painful that can be, right? I'm often like this. I know these things. I'm like, I know there's a demo for so-and-so and I don't see it on the main page, featured list and blah, blah, blah. I got to go and search and, why? We don't have to do that in 2027. We don't, right? We can do all of that. AI can handle all of that seamlessly. And before you guys say, we've done that before with Connect and it was horrible. No, we didn't. Connect wasn't AI powered, right? Connect had a fixed set of commands that you needed to give it in order to do a very limited set of things. And the problem with something like Connect was that, you had this camera microphone sitting, feet away from you, several feet away from you. And oftentimes it just didn't work. It couldn't hear you. Different accents, enunciations, all of that stuff was a problematic. And as soon as you try to say something, hey, Connect do this, and it didn't work, you were done, right? And you wanted to use your controller. Well, guys, again, we use AI every day, right? I'm not, you don't have to love AI in general, but we're using it every day in some way, shape, or form. You go on Amazon, it's AI now, right? You go to Google, search for something, it's AI now. You're doing something on your iPhone, it's powered by AI now. We use AI all the time. And we know what it can do. It's way, way, way beyond that model that the Connect was. You don't have a fixed set of commands. You use natural language. It has an LLM. It knows everything, right? It can decipher from your accents and, you don't have to be so precise with the wording and all of that stuff. We know that. right? So it's way more practical now. And to me, that can fundamentally change how we use consoles and how we, interact with our gaming platform, and just streamline everything in a way that you really can't do not can't do technically, but you don't see that on PC, right? I mean, first of all, it being an open platform means there's no standardization, right? Sony has a opportunity for this closed ecosystem that they can control and optimize it for, right? Because we know that the PS6, if nothing else, is going to have a ton of AI processing, right? A neural processing power, tons of tops and all of that stuff. So how are they going to use that? That's a logical, explanation, right? Right? Like, they have this box, it's closed, it can do a lot of this processing. So I, again, can't say for sure that that's what they're going to ship it, but there has been a lot of stuff being looked in that realm for sure. It makes sense to me, right? I mean, again, we see that on a lot of our devices today, smart devices, and especially more advanced things. We see that, but you can't really do that in as efficiently and streamlined way with a PC that's open. It has all of these different, services and software and vendors doing all this other stuff. Copilot is there from Microsoft technically. No one really uses it, right? For that kind of stuff. And again, interfacing all of that with your gaming, with Steam, which isn't Microsoft, with Epic, which isn't Microsoft, right? With Uplay, which isn't or Ubisoft Store, whatever, which, Like, that's harder to do. But Sony has the opportunity to do that in a closed box. So we'll see. We'll see if they do that. Of course, AI can do much more, and we'll see that across PC and probably Xbox and whatever. A lot more dynamic aspects in games, and Sony tried to do this game hint thing, which no one really uses on PS5. Where in the middle of a game you can leverage resources that the developer puts in there to get a video to see how you beat this boss or how you find this trophy or something like that. Again, that stuff would be so much easier and much more powerful with AI, right? In the middle of a game, how do I beat this boss? It just pops up, shows you what you need to show, what you need to see. So game hint, as they call it now on PS5, but now powered by AI, just seems like a logical step. Streaming, capturing footage, capturing videos and photos in gameplay. Again, simple commands. And again, with AI, you can give it complex things, right? You can tell it beforehand. You can say, hey, whenever I unlock a trophy, capture the video and send to my friend or post to my Facebook. You can give it something like that, and it can do that, and we'll be actively doing that as you play, right? You don't have to keep giving it these simple commands. So that to me seems like the minimum thing of how I think we'll be interfacing and playing games over the next few years. But at the minimum, I'm just saying that I think that the real differentiator and the opportunity perhaps to separate these boxes from PC, to separate these boxes from each other even, is how well they can integrate AI and to what extent, it'll be able to actually augment our experience. When the official announcement come out, I want you guys to remember this video. I'm going to remember this video and catalog it, okay? Because these are safe bets. RDNA 5 GPU, Zen 6 CPU, we know that. A lot of focus on ray tracing, path tracing, neural rendering. We know this. They've said this already. Sony, AMD, Microsoft, they've already said this and shown this, right? This is not mystery. CPU counts, clock speed, whatever. Path tracing at 60 frames per second, 4K 60 is the target. 4K 120 kind of being much more of a normalized standard. Being able to go above 120, that is going to happen with the new HDMI and display technologies, right? And then some level of AI integration into the overall experience. What could that really look like? What could that really mean? All I can say is that that's one of the only ways in today's era that they can really differentiate the experience. In 2027, 2028, what we know is of the world, how we interact now with our devices, that's the way to do it. Now, there's a right way to do it, of course, and there's a wrong way to do it. We shall see how it actually happens. But let me know what you guys think. Did I forget anything major? What is something that next gen can bring or should bring that will bring you in, right? That will convince you that it's time to upgrade, that it's time to be worthy, right? Are you most excited about just path tracing and no rendering stuff? Are you most excited about what HDMI 2.2 can bring? Or are you intrigued by what AI could potentially bring to the overall experience? You let me know that in the comments. And until the next one, TruTechnoGamer here, signing off.